This is a 1972 Chrysler Newport. It's been off the road since 2003. That's 22 years now because of an engine swap that went wrong and only got partly done. I'm going to finish up that engine swap and see if I can get this thing running. I got this from a fellow named Rick. He was a big fan of the Chrysler 300s, like the 55 through 71 version, and he had a lot of those. But Chrysler stopped the 300 in 71, and he was going to make a 72. Then he got an offer of a 440 engine, which is a big upgrade over the 400 it had. His nephew was learning auto mechanics, so he gave it to him to drop the 440 in. Once the engine was in, they could never get any spark on it, and that put a delay in the project. It shuffled around from yard to yard, but it's been 20 years since that engine was put in here, and the installation has never been finished. Here's where I get into the story. First, I gathered a bin of old electronics together. We got some push-button radios. That one even has FM. The old TRS-80 Model 2 I found up at the mine. The service contract ended in '83, so it's a little bit out of date. Then I brought some spare tires along with that bin to California. Got the car loaded up, got our stomachs loaded up, some very good pizza. Thanks again, Rick. I had to add a lot more height here than I expected because this car sits a lot lower than I expected. But we got rocker panel clearance. I think we'll be okay. Worst case scenario, I'll pop off the fenders along the road. We'll see how it goes. Let's take a look at the fun stuff. And that is a 440 big block. That's not the original engine, but that doesn't bother me at all. Just the fact that it's here and it's big. Apparently this was an AC car, but not anymore. Condenser's still there though. See all sorts of loose brackets and stuff. That's probably not things I want falling out along the highway. Same as in this battery tray. Tools, bolts, all sorts of things. We're just gonna do a quick cleanup. That knife appears to be glued into the battery tray, so we'll just leave that. It looks like we're ready to go. And now we're headed east. Took a little longer than expected. Ran into just a little bit of rain. We made it here, but now I gotta unload it. I was hoping gravity would take it the rest of the way. It's pretty close. Got an idea. I'm gonna add a little extra gravity over here. Then I'm going to smooth out gravity a little bit over here. That might work. Let's keep going. This car has a trailer hitch on it, which is great because it means I can use the pushing stick. This is just a piece of steel tubing with a trailer coupler on both ends. Super easy to hook up, and you can use it to pull and to push. I only looked at this briefly before the ride home, just to make sure nothing would fall off along the way. But now that we're back, let's take a better look. The body is really solid. I don't see any rust holes at all. There's a little damage in the rear quarter, but that's not bad. And that's real metal. Without rust, metal's a lot easier to deal with. And this isn't surprising, being a California car, but they do have their drawbacks too. You can tell there's a lot of sun damage here. Even the newspapers kind of look like they caught on fire. 6x9s. Looks like the sun got to that too. Something's going on to the window here. Doesn't quite line up. Gonna have to deal with something there. This is the beginning of the emissions era. They actually posted the emissions on as a window sticker. Apparently a friend of Rick's started to paint the car and only did part of the nose. So one corner's black and then it isn't. There's white paint involved at some point. There's a little bit of bodywork needed here and there. A lot of these cars had vinyl roofs, and that kind of looks like old seam marks. These little indentations look like that was where the vinyl roof ended with a piece of trim. The emblems have been removed. The side marker lights have been removed too, and some bodywork's been done. These are Chrysler 300 wheels. There should be 2 more of them in the trunk. The key turns, doesn't seem to do anything. Just feels like it's spinning freely in there. We'll just deal with the trunk later. Take a peek in the passenger side here. Door opens nicely. Huh, the vinyl actually looks decent. Bet the armrest's around here somewhere. We got a pile of miscellaneous stuff on the floor. Let's pull all that out and see what we got. Okay, this looks like the interior door trim. That definitely should go there. Be the armrest holder. I can even see that X-shaped pattern in the vinyl. Door latch button, more than one. Power switches for like power windows. I don't know about that either. Got a spare center cap. That looks right. There's a pair of round mirrors with a cable style remote actuator. Those work well. Door speakers, Infinity brand, big magnets, and a 2002 Marvel watch. Spider-Man? Okay. Spare oil filters, speaker controls. It kind of looks like an aftermarket fader for when having 4 speakers in your stereo was a new thing. Sure, I'll need these. Radiator cap. Oh, hey. That probably goes there. Put this in the engine pile. I think that's all they're in there. Those seat covers leave a little something to be desired. Let's see how bad the seat underneath is. I think this is better. Looks like it's only really torn on the seam. Bet that could be fixed. That's where those push buttons go. To flip the seat forward. Optional shoulder belts that clip onto the lap belts. While I'm here, we got a radiator. Let's grab that. Hopefully I'll need this soon. Spare fan shrouds. Found the armrests. Mystery box. Huh. Another idler pulley. Looks just like the first one. One of them should work. Rear armrests with ashtrays, because it's the 70s. Looks like this goes between the front seats, so you either can have a bench seat or an armrest. And a cigarette lighter on the back, for when they were actually cigarette lighters and not just power outlets for accessories. Let's take a look in the glove compartment. Hopefully the key will work on this one. There we go. Old registration sticker. More stuff about emissions. Must have been big on that. Ah, Chrysler 300 hood ornament. Key to Toyota. Brand new thermostat. Oh, the operator's manual. Even have the breaker point gap, with a note saying how points are not used with the electronic ignition system. We got the fancy model. Super concentrated windshield washer fluid. 20 drops per quart of water. Now onto the driver's side door. Oops. A little bit of an issue there. Looks like the fender's got to go in slightly there. Worry about adjusting that later. The sun hit this side a little more. You can see the fading in the seat cover too. We do have pulleys. There's another crank pulley. We already have one of those. I do need a water pump pulley. And one of those will be my water pump pulley. There's even a variety of belts to choose from. And some wood screws and carpet tape. This seat cover leaves something to be desired. The seat does too. But the seat's still better than the cover. We've got a negative cable with somewhat questionable insulation. Vacuum line. chrome breather. Fuel line empty. I think this means there's new fuel line in there somewhere. That could be handy, especially if it's already installed. Kind of looks like a throttle cable bracket, some universal one. Those are cable mounts that clip in. Return spring mounts. Trim rings. Plymouth hubcap. Carb gasket. And a selection of cooling fans. The rear seat upholstery doesn't look too bad from this angle. It's only really when you get to the top there's an issue. I like the emblem in between the seats. Sitting for 20 years will leave a car a little bit messy, so I got a lot of cleaning to do here. But cleaning isn't fun, so let's go back under the hood where the fun stuff is. Even though this engine was supposed to have ran before it was put in, it was just put in and then never ran. Which means I want to take over some of the basics and see what we got here. Like, does it have oil? Yep, we got oil. Looks clean, so it might have just been put in when the engine was put in. This air filter didn't have a wing nut on it. I think the stud was just a little short. Let's see what we got there. Looks like, oh, aftermarket coil. The throttle moves, a little rough. I'm going to oil that up before I do much. No fan belt, so I don't have to worry about any accessories having an issue. Got some very fancy cast iron headers that don't seem to have an exhaust pipe connected to them. So I don't need to worry about any restriction of any kind. No radiator, so I don't have to check the coolant level. It might be a good idea to pull the plugs and spray some oil in the cylinders. They've been sitting for a long time. We'll do some general lubrication all over the place. I was lubricating the throttle linkage and I noticed something. This moves a little better, but the whole carburetor moves too. They weren't done installing this engine. I got to keep an eye out for that, because just something's there doesn't mean it was tightened down. There's real nice high quality wires going to the plugs. Let's see what happens in the plugs. Yeah, they look absolutely brand new and unused. Let's spray some oil in that cylinder. Can't really see. I'm gonna have you go in there, see what you guys can see. One handy thing about this camera, it's got a back monitor, so I can point it down and then see sideways. Oh yeah, there's the spark plug hole. This missed it. Missed it. Getting there. The side of the engine will be good. There we go. Got some in there. I just noticed the voltage regulator. It appears there's goop pouring out of it and dripping all the way down the firewall. That can't be good. I just noticed another thing about this carburetor. It's operated off a cable right here that goes to a linkage. So when you press the pedal, it pulls that way against this return spring. The return spring doesn't actually return this to idle. Something in this linkage, possibly this bar that goes to the transmission, is out of place, making this spring overpower the return spring. So if this did ever run, it would have just revved to the moon. And you can't push with a cable, so you have to physically grab the throttle to slow it down. We're just going to take that off for now. I think this just operates a kick down, so when you hit the gas it shifts down a gear. But for now, I want that blade to go to idle when I let go of it. You give an attempt to turn this over. It does turn. That's very good. If you go around once on the crankshaft, you know that all the pistons are free. But I always go around twice, but the camshaft turns at half the speed the crankshaft does. So if there's a stuck valve, you'll feel it in the cam, and you got to turn twice to get that all the way around once. I've got the positive cable here, and I'm going to put a battery there. This cable doesn't reach. It's got a splice that's shortening it up a little bit. And my guess as to why it was too short is that there used to be a fusible link that connected that. It possibly burned out and someone just wanted to test something and connected that temporarily, something along those lines. but it gives me the opportunity to talk a little bit about fusible links because they're a little weird. If you've worked on cars, you're familiar with fuses. These are put inside circuits, so if the circuit draws too much power, like there's a short circuit or something, it burns out and you just replace it. There's also circuit breakers that you don't have to replace, they'll just reconnect. But fusible links are a little weird. What I have here is a spool of fusible link wire, and it looks like just regular wire, because it is. The inside is just normal, standard wire. The outside is an extra special durable insulation. And this wire is meant to burn up if you draw too much power. This piece of wire you put inside your wiring system and you make sure it's a lot smaller than the other wire around it. I've heard 4 gauge size down is the rule of thumb. The key thing is that insulation. It lets the wire burn up inside and doesn't light your car on fire. That's all there is to it. A few more things that I'm not sure if they're true. Some people say the length of the wire matters. I don't think it does. Because it's not like this is a resistance wire where the length changes the resistance. It's supposed to flow all the electricity through until it goes and burns up. So I don't think the length really affects anything. The other thing people say is you can never solder this in, because the solder will wick inside the wire and change how much electricity will flow. That's true up to a point, but the solder will only go so far. You're not going to have the solder fill the entire length of wire. I think it's okay to solder them in. But I don't know if that's true, so use your own judgment. Now I'm going to connect these 2 bits of wire with a fusible link. We might be able to get somewhere here. I've got my fusible link in place. I've got voltage. And nothing. Now following where the power should be, goes into this area, and try seeing where I have power and where I don't. I have a disconnected wire here, and more disconnected wires. Oh, hey, here's an old alligator clip when someone was trying to do the same kind of thing I'm doing. Wonder what they were hooking up. That goes way under the car. Wonder what that's for. We're just going to leave that connected to nothing for now until I figure out what it's supposed to do. This one here has power to it. Guess we can connect it to this one and see what happens. Before I do that, I'm going to disconnect the terminal. The plug does fit in. Now I can see if I have sparks. Alright, nothing's actively on yet, so we can put the terminal back on. I heard the starter. This is the battery that wouldn't start the Saturn. Let me try a different one. I know the ignition was a stopping point for this project, so I already pulled the cap off. I didn't see anything visibly wrong, but what that did show us, the distributor does turn, and that is important. It's got to turn before you can do anything useful. We have a coil. There's no wires at all hooked to the coil, so we got to get power there somehow. We have a pickup inside the distributor for electronic ignition, and that goes along and connects to the electronic ignition box. So that's good. We also have a double ballast resistor. That is going to be powering up the coil and powering up this ignition box. Now that coil takes ring terminals, which is common. And I see some stray ring terminal connectors here. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3. As thick as this one is, it kind of looks like it goes to the alternator. I'll have to figure that one out later, but I'm going to ignore it for now. We got to go back to the ballast resistor, see where the power is and where it goes. Turn the ignition on, and I got power to this wire right here, so that's good. I've also got power to this wire here, and power to this wire here. I've got power to this terminal, got power to this one, power to this one. Every terminal on the ballast resistor is live. With the ignition off, I lost the power to most of the ring terminals, except this one. This is live all the time, just floating around here. So I definitely think this probably should be hooked to the alternator. I'll deal with the charging system later. For now, I won't have a fire. A non-fire is good. With all the live wires, I went to the internet for a diagram. Now I've got my diagram here. I'm looking at the plug. There's one thing to keep in mind when looking at a plug like that. You gotta know whether you're looking at it this way or this way. Because when you do this, it flips over. On this diagram, I'm looking at it this way. These two wires here go to the distributor pickup, which we trace them along. That's exactly where they go. Which means this one here goes to the negative side of our coil. That comes out here to this wire, which goes along to this ring terminal. But this should be our negative, so we're going to try out hooking it to negative. Now pin 3 is coming out of the ballast resistor. You can orient the ballast resistor by this jumper wire. Here's our jumper wire, so that'll all be 12 volts when it's running. And over here, we have 2 low voltage outputs. We got a green wire, and that comes in right there and goes to pin number 3. Now our last wire, pin 1, is going to be regular power in. We have a blue and yellow wire that goes to right here on the jumper side of the ballast resistor, so that's in there right. So it looks like this is wired up correctly, and we got the negative side of the coil hooked up. This wire right here is the one I want to power the coil, and that goes to a connector that has 2 wires coming out of it. Now one of those is actually probably going in for start power, the other one is one will go to the coil. And this other ring terminal I found that was live is on a brown wire, so I think this is the positive. But it doesn't reach. Got my coil hooked up, my pro level spark plug tester hooked up. It's time for the moment of truth. Absolutely nothing. I'm a little concerned about the high performance coil with the regular ignition system. So I grabbed a coil out of my bin and I have a professional test set up here to make sure it has proper spark. We go from the negative cable, piece of aluminum wire, that simulates a vehicle. A wire connected to the negative post, that simulates a points distributor. Just do that. It's hard to see on camera, but we do have spark there. In my stash of parts, I had saved a wiring harness from a Dodge pickup truck, which includes the ignition module, and it has a voltage regulator. So there's my parts. This is a module that came with this car. It's a 5-pin style that's supposed to be on the earlier cars. This is the one I got from that truck harness. It's a 4-pin style. We're going to put it on anyway, because that really doesn't matter this way. Much like in a PC, there's more than one voltage running around. When Chrysler first went to this computerized ignition, they used more than one voltage. They had the 12 volts going in, and then the one through the ballast resistor that was a low voltage. Later on, they made that voltage drop internally, so you don't need the 5th pin with the ballast resistor input. All the other pins are the same, so the 4-pin modules will run fine in a 5-pin system, but a 5-pin module needs that voltage, so it won't run on a 4-pin system. It's not really backwards compatible at all. Going to the newer style, we should be okay. I've never seen this before. When you turn on the key, you get random spark. But when you crank the engine, you get nothing. That means we have some kind of major signal issue. That's a different problem. Luckily, both big and small blocks use the same pickup coil inside the distributor, and I've got a spare small block here. I didn't expect this. That's a dual pickup coil. Wonder why I have that. One of these pickups has the wrong plug, and one has the right plug. We'll go with the one with the right plug. Rotor's a little mangled. Hopefully this does work. It looks like we've got working spark. I'm going to put together a mix. Got a little 2-stroke oil in. I'm going to use this for juicing the carburetor because that engine hasn't run in a while. I want to give the piston and rings a little extra oil until the oil starts splashing around from the crankcase. It'll be a little better than straight gas. I want to aim for the bowl vent. I aim for it. I rarely hit it. Positive terminal's real hot. Usually it indicates a bad connection. Let's see if we can do anything about that. It's a little better. Let's try a better battery in here. This battery box is huge. Wonder how big I can go, or how big I'm supposed to go. Now that sounded promising. I wonder if the timing's ever been set. Probably should check that. I rolled it over till the timing mark is somewhere on the timing indicator. This is my number 1 cylinder here. The rotor's pointing pretty much at it. And this little reluctor wheel here, that's pretty well lined up with where it's going to be triggering the sensor. It may not be timed exactly, but it should be close enough to get it running. I just realized something very important. This distributor cap takes the wiring where the plug wire has to go in there pretty far. These spark plug wires have the terminal buried inside for this style terminal. I pulled off one of the boots so I could show you the magnitude of the problem. This is the terminal that's under those boots. It's sitting at about this height, around a ½ inch away from metal to metal contact. Which means, in order for this thing to have coughed and fired as much as it did, that spark had to jump that ½ inch to get to a wire, to get to a plug. So what I need to do now is change out these terminal ends. But I can't find any of the right size. So what I'm going to do right now is modify these. We'll just trim this part off. And now we've got a roundish end. Reform it and make it a little more round. And now we have actual metal to metal contact. I always check for spark at the coil because that eliminates the cap and rotor and, in this case, spark plug wires. If you're going to have spark at the spark plugs, you're going to have spark here first. I decided to pull off this voltage regulator. It looks like it overheated and melted. And that's what dripped down the firewall. That thing got super hot. I wonder if the spark plug wires that made it have no spark at all caused some experimenting with wiring, but then blew up the module and the pickup and caused whatever happened here. I'm betting those wires were a source of serious frustration if you didn't realize what had happened. I've hacked off the ends of all the spark plug wires and gotten rid of the boots. We'll see if that makes things better. If this works, I'll order new ends and put the bright ones on, but for now, this might work. It's definitely firing more often. I watched the recording. That doesn't seem right. We're going to take this thing off and see what we got going on here. There are only 3 fasteners holding this down. They're all finger tight. Definitely a temporary installation. Alright, got a carburetor. And then we've got a gasket. Oh, that's a metal spacer plate. Then a gasket. And then more metal plates. This appears to be some kind of shim kit, where it's stacked gasket, metal, all the way down. That's close to a ½ inch thick. The only thing I see is the top layer was metal, not a gasket. So we're just going to take this top layer off, and I can bolt right back onto that one. Let's take a look at this first. This is a Carter AVS carburetor, 4-barrel design. It looks really clean. It looks like it's just been sitting. It doesn't look like it's been used. Everything seems to move freely. There's a little bit of surface rust, nothing bad, nothing I care about. You can hear inside when you turn it. Might be hard to hear through the camera, but I can shake it. I can actually hear both floats going separately. There's one on either side and they're both free. This thing actually looks remarkably good. I don't even see any signs this carb has ever been run. I don't see any carbon buildup, anything like that. So I'm not going to take it apart because I don't have any new gaskets. And it doesn't sound like anything's gummed up in there at all. So we're just going to go and put it back on. All I had to do was really finish the installation, add the last fastener, and tighten it down. Let's give it a shot again. Sounds like the ignition is too far advanced because when it fires, it stops the engine. so I'm going to retard it a pretty good amount. We know the distributor rotates this way, so by rotating it into the rotation, it would happen sooner. If we rotate it with the rotation, it would happen later. So now the engine has to turn a little bit further before it fires. You know, I probably should check the firing order before I do much further. Well, the firing order was a little bit on the not quite right side also. I want to make one thing perfectly clear here. The guy that installed this engine has made a few mistakes, but this is not hack work. I've seen hack work, I've done hack work, I still do hack work. This guy was trying to do it right, but he was learning. Like the wires, he probably bought a set from a store that told him these are the right wires, and he just went and installed them. I could tell by the way he ran the wires and all that, he was intending to do a good job. They fit, it looked like it would work. I could see why he wouldn't question it. And then had the problems with ignition and went down the whole slippery slope of all these other issues. He was putting effort in it and wanted to do it right. So this wasn't a I don't care about it thing, this just was a I'm learning about it thing. But let's see what happens now. This isn't running quite right, but I know my timing is just a guess. There's also a couple potential vacuum leaks. Like this one here, that one there, that one there. I probably should hook up some hoses. There's a few tuning issues to sort out. Gonna give it a little more advance. Hopefully that'll help some. I've gotten pretty good at filling the fuel bowls through the vent. There's one on each side. Now that sounds better. I need a water pump pulley, and there's a selection inside. Since there's a double pulley on the alternator, my first guess was a double pulley for the water pump. That doesn't line up at all with the alternator. Doesn't really line up with the power steering pump either. The single water pump pulley lines up with the outer groove on the crank pulley, but not with the power steering pump pulley, and even worse with the alternator. Maybe that's why there was a spare crank pulley. That actually looks identical. Huh. I still have this spare small block Dodge, and it has a 3-belt crank pulley. Wonder what the chances are that might fit. The small block pulley does fit, but doesn't really help. I broke down and actually looked at how it's supposed to go, and for the alternator you need the AC compressor in there, and I don't have one. At least not for this car. I have this engine sitting here. It's a small block, but some of the pulleys will be compatible. And it's got an AC compressor. And eventually I will want AC in this car. So I got to consider these options also. For sure I'll need a radiator, so I cleaned up the one from the back seat. Fan will take care of the rest. I tried to put the radiator in, but I couldn't. The radiator doesn't fit past the battery tray. I'm out of room on the passenger side. That tray's got to come out. By removing the battery tray and the lower bolts that held in the radiator, I got the radiator in the car, but this is definitely not the one from this car. None of the bolt holes line up. Right there looks like the lower radiator bolt that's supposed to fit in this slot. It doesn't fit. This radiator is wider than whatever radiator came out of here. They're off by inches. Quite a few inches. That's not really a big deal, we just add some more holes. The question is, where do we add the holes? I know my fan's gonna mount there, and there's a fan shroud here. All I have to do is make sure that that fan is on center and everything should fit. Side to side, it already looks pretty good where it sits, which is good because it's sitting between frame rails and I can't really move it. All I have to do is get the height right and we're in business. I just discovered a real big problem with this radiator, and I'm glad I checked. The water pump picks up its water from the driver's side. The radiator lets the water out here on the passenger side. There's no outlet on the driver's side, which means the water would have to come out the radiator, go through the fan, and go into the water pump. That is not a good situation. That was also one of my stumbling blocks on this car, where I absolutely have to use the radiator from this car, but the outlet's on the driver's side, and the engine wants the water from the passenger side. If that 440 was here instead of a small block Chevy, it would work perfectly with that radiator. But let's not think about that one too hard. Luckily, on this car, the radiator is not part of the bodywork, so I can change it out. Gotta go into the shed again. Here's the radiator stash. Let's see what we got. We need a driver's side inlet. It's about 29 inches wide. That one's passenger side. Passenger side. This one's driver's side. A little narrow. This one's driver's side. That's a possibility. I threw together a belt setup that will drive the power steering and the water pump. We'll deal with the charging system later. The belt takes a zigzag going to the power steering pump, so that doesn't line up. It also takes a zigzag going to the crank pulley, so that doesn't line up. For now, I'll rely on belt flex and ignore that, but eventually I'll need a spacer under this pulley to move it forward a little bit, and that'll fix the alignment on both of them. I've got the old Jeep radiator in place. It physically fits in. It's actually a little on the small side, and the outlet is on the correct side. That's also small. The inlet's also small, and the mounts don't line up, of course. I could make all that work, but I was working on something else at the same time. There's a lot less fire once I advance the timing, but I figure I probably should put the air cleaner back on just in case there's a little bit more. When I got the car, this wasn't bolted on because the carb stud was too short. The old carburetor stud was pretty close, so I got a piece of threaded rod. I'm just going to make a new stud that's a little longer. About that much longer. That height looks better. Need a wing nut. A shiny one. I actually went and bought a new air filter element. And that wasn't too expensive. A lot of different Mopar vehicles use the same thing, which got me wondering, how expensive would the right radiator be? Apparently, not too bad. If I'm really going to drive this car and really thinking about putting AC in it, I'm going to have to change out that Jeep radiator again anyway. I even popped the extra for the 26-inch wide 4-core version, and it's on the way. I want to give a shout out to Rick and his wife Rosie, because they went over the top to make our trip to California really great. My whole family loved it. They're great people. I'm going to end this video here, so I'm in a holding pattern until I get that radiator in. There's still a lot of work to go in this car, but I met my original goal of getting it running. And that's good inspiration for doing the rest of the work. Makes work easier when you know it's going to be good afterwards. And it sure was a lot of fun seeing the engine come back to life. Hope you're having fun too. We'll see you next time.